Hey everybody, I am Elisha Christopher. Thanks for tuning in. It's yet another beautiful day in the garden, and I want you to begin with me, if you will, by taking just a simple breath. So breathe in and let go. And so today I want to talk about context, and I believe that it was Albert Einstein who said context is everything. And I really do believe, in one of the ways that I try to live my life is by always seeking greater context, by always looking for the underlying context or storyline or mythos underneath anything that I'm experiencing, and finding a way to lay a context on top of experiences, individuals, and things that happen in a way that allows me to find deeper understanding and seek deeper meaning. And so Michael Pollan, in his book, How to Change Your Mind, talks a lot about the default mode network, which is a whole series of areas of our brain that work together to reinforce the reality that we expect to see. And the default mode network is really sort of a protective mechanism that allows us to perceive the reality that supports our existence best. But it's also kind of created by default, and that is by experience, by choices, by beliefs, by this reinforced experience of life. Every single time we have a belief and then we have an experience that reinforces that belief, the default mode network in the brain then sets us up to expect that thing to happen again. And so it allows us to really see, in a sense, the world that we expect to see. And our brains are sort of programmed that way. And so one of the practices that I think it's really important for us to engage in is to sort of check our context, check our storylines, check the world that we're seeing, because oftentimes what we're seeing is our expectations, and we're not seeing clearly reality as it is, or we're seeing our judgments or our perceptions about things and not really seeing the truth of things. And so if we're willing to look for context, it can often make it not necessarily easier to deal with certain things, but it can at least allow us, again, that pause, that breath, that opportunity to perhaps respond as opposed to react, and move towards something with greater ease, or move away from something with greater ease even. And I used to experience a lot of anxiety and stage fright when it came to speaking in front of people. And at this point in my life, I'm a public speaker, and this is something that I do. But in much of my growing up and in my high school and college years, speaking in front of people was like one of the absolute most terrifying things you could have asked me to do. And if I had a report to give or a presentation, I would either miss class, make myself sick, I would sit in the back of the room and go last and torture myself and sweat and almost cry and be shaking by the time I got up there and to speak, and be holding my note cards, shaking. And I was almost incapable of speaking in front of people because the anxiety was so overwhelming. And at some point, one of my teachers told me, you know, Elisha, there's really no difference. Your body doesn't actually know the difference between fear and excitement. That anxiety and excitement are actually kind of the same energy, and perhaps even very similar neurochemicals, and so they feel very similar. And so what if you could just shift the perspective? Instead of saying that I am so terrified of speaking, that I'm actually incredibly excited to speak. And what happened in that just shift in context and changing the story just a little bit about the energy that I was feeling, I actually began to unlock my speaking capacity. And that now when I feel that bubbling energy or that anxiety or that burning and I'm about to speak in front of a group of people, I contextualize that as, oh wow, here comes the energy of my talk, here comes the excitement that I have to share. And then when I open my mouth, there's a greater sense of flow and ease because I'm not blocking that energy that wants to move. And it was just a simple shift in context from, I'm not afraid, I'm excited. This isn't fear, this is anticipation and excitement and possibility. And if we can perhaps use that same flip in context when we hear a world leader or a politician or someone that we are engaged with in our life and they say something that's really hard for us to understand or that we don't believe in, can we take a step back and begin to ask some questions about that person's context, about what are their beliefs, their worldviews, their values, their ideals, what's the things that are most important to them in the world, what does their religious or spiritual philosophy tell them about their interaction with life and the planet and other people. And if we can at least find some answers to those questions, even if we don't disagree with, even if we don't agree with people, we can disagree with them in a way that we can at least understand where they are coming from and why they think the way that they think, even if we don't necessarily agree. But if we can look back a little bit, step back, reflect enough to look for the context in the world and in situations, we can find deeper meaning and deeper understanding, and then analyze how we want to interact with these things or these people in a way that's not triggered or reactive, but much more responsive. And then if we can use the power of metaphor and the power of story to look at our own life context and the circumstances that are happening around us and the global events that happen, and look for a context that informs us about how we want to be and how we need to shift our own life, that the context, that the storylines can reveal a lot to us if we're willing to look. We can't just see everything as a bunch of disparate, unrelated circumstances. We need to begin looking for the underlying context and storylines that weave things together, because everything truly is connected. And if the context that we're looking for is everything's connected, then we can start to put the dots together and see how to address the situation at hand in front of us, whatever it may be. So today I want to invite you to begin to look for the context, to find a way to step back a little bit and examine some of the storylines or the ways that we are each individually perceiving things. So if you're enjoying what you're hearing, I just want to say thanks again for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you're willing, please share this with someone who you think might be able to hear it. I'll see you tomorrow.